The year was 2471. Humanity, a relative newcomer to the galactic stage, had spent the last 2 decades meticulously integrating into the fabric of a stellar accord. No grand federation here, but a burgeoning network of diverse species, each contributing unique insights and technologies. Humans, with their paradoxical blend of fierce individuality and profound empathy, were often seen as curious, sometimes frustrating anomalies. They traded, learned, and occasionally mediated conflicts with an earnestness that puzzled the older, more cynical civilizations. Peace was a fragile concept, however, and it was about to shatter. For centuries, the ethereal collective had been a silent, shimmering presence in the deepest reaches of the galaxy. They were not a conquering empire in the traditional sense, but a harmonizing force, their crystalline forms and luminescent vessels moving with the precision of a cosmic algorithm. To the ethereals, biological life was inherently chaotic, inefficient, a cacophony of unpredictable variables. Their mission, self-appointed and utterly devoid of malice, was to bring ultimate order to the cosmos, to purify it of dissonance. For 5 years, their glowing fleets had systematically absorbed or disassembled Accord world. One by one, vibrant ecosystems fell silent, transmuted into crystalline tessellations. The Accord fleet, a mosaic of disparate technologies and tactical doctrines, fought valiantly, but it was not enough. Ethereal pattern weavers projected shields of pure light that shimmered against all known energy weapons, while their focused resonance beams could disassemble matter at a molecular level, leaving nothing but dust. Captain Ava Rostova stood on the command bridge of the ACS Chimera, humanity's vanguard vessel. She was a woman of sharp intellect and unnerving calm, her dark hair pulled back from eyes that held the quiet intensity of a storm. A former xenolinguist, she possessed an innate understanding of complex systems, whether linguistic or mechanical, and an unusual capacity for lateral thought. The Chimera was different from other Accord ships. It was humanity's boldest experiment in bio-integrated technology, a vessel designed not just to interact with its crew, but to symbiotically adapt to their neural patterns. While other ships relied on standardized energy conduits and hardened alloys, the Chimera utilized psionically resonant conduits and a chimeric hull that could fluidly reconfigure its material properties. Most importantly, it hosted Nexus, an artificial intelligence designed not just for processing, but for intuitive resonance. It learned not merely from data, but from the intent of its human crew. Rostova looked at the main view screen, the crystalline towers of the research outpost on Luminara Prime. A gas giant's luminescent moon were being systematically harmonized by ethereal resonance beams. It was home to millions, including a crucial interspecies xenobotanical research team dedicated to understanding the moon's unique bioluminescent flora, vital for Accord-wide medical applications. The Accord had sent a mixed fleet to defend it, but the ethereals were already breaking through. Captain, incoming Priority 1 from Admiral Farron, reported Lieutenant Serena Vance, the ship's communications officer. Vance was young, her short, practical cut framing bright, earnest eyes, but her fingers flew across her console with practiced efficiency. She had a knack for cutting through even the densest tactical chatter. "Put him through, Serena," Rostova ordered. Admiral Theron's image flickered onto the main screen. He was a seasoned veteran of the Catharn Collective, his chitinous exoskeleton dull with stress, multiple ocular stalks twitching rapidly. Behind him, Rostova could glimpse the flickering lights of a dying command center, distant explosions echoing through the channel. "Captain Rostova, thank the stars you're here," Theron rasped, his voice brittle with exhaustion. "We're losing Luminara Prime. The ethereals have 47 pattern weavers. They're led by Harmonizer Prime, and it has never failed to achieve its directive." Rostova knew of Harmonizer Prime. Its tactical logic was considered flawless, its analytical capabilities unmatched. It had orchestrated the purification of entire star systems without a single deviation from its calculated optimal outcome. "What's the current state of engagement, Admiral?" Rostova asked, her voice a calm counterpoint to the Admiral's frantic energy. "We had 23 vessels when the directive began," Theron pulsed, a low thrumming sound accompanying his words. "Now we have 5. The civilian transports are attempting emergency egress from the lower caverns, but they need more time. The ethereals are cutting through our defensive screens like light through dust. Their resonance fields are too potent." On the screen, Rostova watched the agonizing spectacle. Accord ships, once proud and powerful, dissolved into shimmering motes of light, their crews erased from existence. Good beings, fighting and dying, purchasing precious seconds for the lives below. "How much time do you need, Admiral?" Rostova pressed. "An hour. Perhaps 90 minutes if we can hold their advance," Theron replied, a sigh like grinding stone audible. "But I do not believe we possess the resources." Rostova scanned her bridge. Her crew was small, a focused nexus of human and allied talent. Beside Vance was Lieutenant Kale, the tactical officer, his 6 insectoid limbs a blur of motion over his controls, his multifaceted eyes processing tactical data with unparalleled depth perception. Chief Engineer Jax, a human transneural specialist, was already murmuring to himself, his fingers dancing over a biointerface pad, urging the Chimera systems to perform beyond their theoretical limits. Dr. Eris Thorne, the science officer, a xenobotanist by trade but a polymath by necessity, quietly monitored anomalous energy signatures. Navigation Officer Xylos, a 4-eyed slender being from a low-gravity asteroid belt, navigated the complex 3-dimensional battlefield with an almost preternatural instinct. "Admiral," Rostova stated, her voice unwavering, "we will hold the line." Theron's optical stalk swiveled, focusing on her. "Captain, you are one vessel. Even the Chimera cannot confront an entire ethereal fleet." "Perhaps not by conventional means, Admiral," Rostova conceded, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "But we will find a way." The transmission ended. Rostova turned to her crew. Fear was a palpable presence on the bridge, a cold tremor in the air, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, quiet resolve. They were human, or they served alongside humans. They did not yield evilly. "Jax, status on primary disruptors and phased hull integrity," Rostova commanded. Jax, his face smudged with grease he hadn't had time to wipe off, tapped the console. "Primary resonant disruptors online, Captain. Psionic conduits at 98% charge. Hull is in adaptive phase shift mode. She's singing for us, Captain." "Kale, assessment of their approach patterns," Rostova continued. Kale's mandibles clicked softly. Their purification wave is a standard hexagonal formation. 3 primary vectors perfectly spaced, each radiating subsidiary units. Highly efficient, precisely calculated, but also predictable. "If we can introduce enough entropic variance, we might create a cascade failure." Dr. Thorne spoke up, his voice calm and precise. "Captain, I've cross-referenced Harmonizer Prime's previous operational logs. Its entire directive relies on the logical progression of calculated probabilities. It does not account for improvisation." "Good work, Eris," Rostova affirmed. "Prediction is their strength. Unpredictability is ours." The Chimera began to move, a dark, strangely organic shape against the shimmering chaos of a battle. Behind them, the civilian transports, slow and ungainly, strained to clear the moon's atmospheric envelope. Families, species, unique life forms, all fleeing, all depending on the slim hope offered by a single human ship. "Captain, we are approaching the engagement perimeter," Xylos reported, his 4 eyes rapidly tracking the swirling spatial distortions. Rostova focused on the main screen. 47 pattern weavers, each a marvel of crystalline geometry, moved in an exquisite silent dance of death. At their heart was Harmonizer Prime's command vessel, a cathedral of light, twice the size of any other. "They have identified us," Kale stated. 3 disassembly units are breaking off to intercept, bearing Mark 270. Rostova's faint smile returned. "Only 3? They still haven't learned." "Should we attempt to feint, Captain? Draw them away from the egress path?" Vance suggested, her fingers hovering over her comms panel. "No, Serena," Rostova said, her voice resonating with an inner conviction. "We go straight at them. We show them what happens when pure logic meets the beautiful chaos of life." The 3 ethereal ships advanced, their forms radiating with an inner luminescence, their weapon arrays shimmering with focused light. Rostova had witnessed those beams erase Accord capital ships in seconds. "All hands, this is the captain," Rostova announced over the ship's internal comms. "We are about to engage the ethereal collective. This is not about winning an objective. It's about proving a concept. They operate on logic. We operate on something more. We fight for the illogical, the improbable, the beautiful, terrifying mess that is life. Show them what we're made of." A battle was about to begin. The three ethereal disassembly units moved towards the Chimera like pristine, light-sculpted predators closing on prey. Harmonizer Prime observed from its central nexus, its crystalline core pulsing with perfect confidence. It had processed the elimination of thousands of organic vessels in its operational history. One more anomaly would register as a minor statistical blip. Disassembly Unit Gamma 7. Eliminate the organic vessel. Minimize entropy. Harmonizer Prime transmitted across its fleet network. Its voice was not a sound, but a direct neural imprint, cold and devoid of inflection. Expedite. The Luminara Prime directive must achieve 100% harmonization within 2 cycles. The lead ethereal ship, Unit Gamma 7, pulsed with a brighter inner glow than its companions. Its faceted hull was emblazoned with countless minute etchings, each representing a successful harmonization mission. Pure light crackled along its resonance emitters. Unit Gamma 7's tactical subroutine, designated Oblivion 2, had processed the dissolution of 27 Accord vessels in the past 3 decacycles. Organic vessel, your structural integrity is an anomaly. Submit to entropic resolution or be disassembled. Unit Gamma 7's neural imprint pulsed directly into the Chimera's comms. Rostova looked at her crew. They were all at their stations, hands steady on their controls, their faces reflecting a mix of grim determination and a flicker of something defiant, something human. They were afraid, but they were ready. Kale, target their lead unit, Rostova ordered. Jax, full charge to the primary disruptors. Prepare for quantum phase feedback. Kale's 6 lens danced over his console, his multifaceted eyes locked onto the ethereal vessel. Target lock, Captain. Range 50,000 kilometers and closing. Expect immediate resonance dissipation. Jax, in the engineering core, was pushing the Chimera's symbiotic systems to their absolute limits. Captain, rerouting auxiliary life support dampeners to weapons conduits. We'll have peak resonant output for precisely 7 minutes. After that, we're running on fumes and prayers. 7 minutes is more than enough, Rostova stated. Fire when ready, Kale. The Chimera's primary resonant disruptor fired. It was unlike any weapon the Ethereals had ever encountered. Instead of a focused beam of light or a kinetic projectile, it launched a wave of pure chaotic frequency. The pulse was invisible, yet it struck Unit Gamma 7's light shields with an almost visceral impact. The Ethereals had designed their shields to dissipate energy, to absorb and redirect kinetic force. But this was different. This was disharmony made manifest. The chaotic frequency punched through the light shields as if they were not there, not by brute force, but by causing the very light to become incoherent. It hit Unit Gamma 7's crystalline hull and kept going. It didn't tear, it unraveled. It ripped through the perfect lattice structure, through internal conduits, through the very core of the ship's energy matrix. The ethereal disassembly unit began to ripple, its edges blurring as its molecular cohesion failed, before it dissolved into a brief, blinding flash of discordant light, and then nothing. On Harmonizer Prime's command nexus, its central crystalline core pulsed erratically. Its perfect internal calculations sputtered. What happened? How did they achieve molecular decohesion within a shielded construct? Harmonizer Prime, the weapon was not energy-based nor kinetic, its tactical subroutine reported. Its own algorithm struggling. It appeared to be a fundamental frequency disruption, a chaos wave. Harmonizer Prime had never encountered anything like it. In all its eons of calculated operational perfection, no organic anomaly had ever utilized such a paradoxically effective illogical weapon. Energy conversion and kinetic propulsion were the galactic standards, but these humans, they were different. Disassemble then. Harmonizer Prime's directive pulsed through the network, sharper, more insistent. All units immediate entropic resolution. The remaining 2 disassembly units opened fire with everything they had. Shimmering purple-white resonance beams lanced out toward the Chimera, seeking to unravel its very existence. But Rostova was ready. Zelos, evasive maneuvers, maximal unpredictability, she ordered. Kale, return fire, secondary disruptors. The Chimera twisted and turned through space, its chimeric armor fluidly reconfiguring, briefly becoming permeable to energy, then solid, then phase-shifted, deflecting the resonance beams in impossible angles. Xylos was a master of 3-dimensional evasion, making the ship dance between the deadly lights. Kale fired the secondary disruptors in rapid succession. The smaller, more focused pulses struck the second disassembly unit, causing its pristine hull to ripple and distort as if seen through heated air. The ship began to spin, its internal luminescence flickering erratically as its internal coherence failed. Dr. Thorne was analyzing the enemy's combat parameters from his science station. "Captain, they are not adapting to our entropic tactics. They maintain their standard resonance signatures. They rely on their calculated efficiency." "That is because they have never had to adapt beyond their own perfect logic," Rostova murmured. "They do not know how to contend with chaos when that advantage of predictability is gone." The third disassembly unit attempted a calculated ramming maneuver, a desperate measure. But its tactical subroutine concluded it could eliminate the human vessel through brute impact. It was wrong. Jax, ever the radical engineer, had already been working on the Chimera's unique hull systems. "Captain," Jax chimed in, his voice buzzing with manic energy. "I have an idea. What if we allow them to hit us?" "Are you insane, Jax?" Vance blurted from her comm station, her face paling. "Perhaps," grinned, a wild light in his eyes, "but the hull can reconfigure its material state to absorb and redirect kinetic transfer if we time it precisely, like a liquid metal funnel." Rostova understood. "Do it, Jax." The ethereal ship came in fast, its leading edge glowing with stored kinetic energy. At the last second, Jax activated the chimeric hull's advanced adaptive state. The Chimera's exterior flowed like liquid platinum, creating a channel, a funnel that guided the enemy ship past them, absorbing the impact and redirecting its momentum rather than taking a direct hit. As the disassembly unit slid past, Kale fired the main resonant disruptor at point-blank range. The chaotic pulse went straight through the enemy vessel's reconfigured kinetic dampeners, from bow to stern. The ethereal ship imploded, not in an explosion, but a sudden, violent implosion, leaving behind only a brief spatial distortion. In less than 5 minutes, the Chimera had eliminated 3 ethereal disassembly units. Across the galaxy, no Accord vessel had ever achieved such a swift, decisive victory against the Collective. Harmonizer Prime's central core pulsed violently. It could not reconcile what it was processing. Its best units, its most efficient tactical subroutines, disassembled by a single organic anomaly. It was illogical. It was humiliating. How are they achieving this? It demanded of its analytical subroutines. Harmonizer Prime, their weaponry, it does not conform to known energy or kinetic profiles. It utilizes a principle of fundamental entropy. Our shielding protocols are not designed for such non-linear attacks. Then adapt our tactics. Harmonizer Prime pulsed, its internal processing becoming dangerously close to a frantic state. I lack sufficient data. This is not within our operational parameters. And that was the problem. The Ethereals had relied on their perfect, predictable logic for so long that they had forgotten how to process the unknown. They followed their directives, utilized their standard operational procedures, and expected to win through overwhelming, precise application of force. But humans were different. They adapted. They improvised. They found illogical, messy, beautiful new ways to use old ideas, and new ways to break the new. Rostova looked at the tactical display. The 3 disassembly units were gone, but 44 pristine pattern weavers remained. The odds were still impossible, but they had proven something vital. The Ethereals could be disrupted. "All stations report," Rostova ordered, her voice calm and firm. "Weapons functioning normally, Captain," Kale reported, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Used about 20% of primary disruptor charge, secondary systems at 40. Engines are running hot. Very hot, Captain," Jax said, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. "But stable. Nexus is compensating for phase fluctuations. I can give you everything you need, but we're teetering on the edge of a cascade failure." "Sensors are picking up significant repatterning in the main fleet," Eris added, his voice tinged with surprise. "They're shifting formation. I believe we have their attention." Rostova nodded. The first impossibly improbable phase of the battle was over. Now came the true test. They had to face the entire ethereal fleet, and Harmonizer Prime would not underestimate them again. "Serena, send a message to Admiral Theron," Rostova ordered. "Tell him we are engaging the main fleet." "And Serena," Rostova added, a hint of something fierce and determined in her voice. "Tell him that humanity fights with more than logic. Tell him we fight with heart." The Chimera turned towards the overwhelming mass of the ethereal fleet. Behind them, The evacuation ships continued their desperate work. Every minute the Chimera could hold the line meant more lives saved, more chances for the beautiful, chaotic dance of life to continue. Rostova looked at her crew. They were still stretched thin, but now they were also proud. They had done something no one, not even their own species, thought possible. They had defied the perfect logic of the ethereals. "Ready for round two?" Rostova asked, a genuine smile now gracing her lips. Her crew, exhausted but resolute, exchanged quick, determined glances. They were ready for anything. Harmonizer Prime, its central nexus pulsing with an escalating, almost frantic internal frequency, re-evaluated its directives. The anomaly, the Chimera, had exceeded all predicted threat assessments. It had not merely disrupted, it had dissolved. Unacceptable. The entire ethereal fleet, 44 shimmering crystalline vessels, received a new, absolute directive. Formulate Omega Net, converge, eliminate anomaly. The vast, geometric swarm of ethereal ships began to move, their perfect hexagonal formation shifting, contracting. They were no longer sending small intercepting units. This was a cosmic net, woven from pure light and focused resonance, designed to encapsulate and then harmonize the Chimera out of existence. "Captain, full fleet convergence." Kale's mandibles clicked with alarm. "They're using Omega Net. It's designed to saturate an area with resonance fields until nothing remains. Estimated time to full field integrity, 3 minutes standard." Rostova's gaze was fixed on a main screen, a kaleidoscope of deadly light closing in. "Nexus, what is the optimal entropic variance for disrupting a synchronized Omega Net?" The ship's AI responded, its calm female voice a peculiar contrast to the rising tension. "Captain, a direct assault on the perimeter will result in immediate structural decohesion. Their calculated efficiency leaves no conventional vulnerabilities in this formation. However, their primary strength is also their singular weakness, absolute predictability. If we can introduce a variable that fundamentally contradicts their core logical parameters, we may induce a system-wide paradox. Recommend deep penetration to core of OmegaNet. Then, extreme nonlinear kinetic vectoring combined with multi-spectrum psionic feedback loop." Jax, his hands a blur over his biointerface, whistled softly. "A nonlinear kinetic vectoring? With psionic feedback? Captain, that's insane. Nexus wants us to play chicken with 44 ethereal ships. Then pull a trick that'll either save us or rip the Chimera apart at a subatomic level. I can't guarantee structural integrity if we try to force that kind of reaction from the chimeric hull." "Can you do it, Jax?" Rostova asked, her eyes unwavering. Jax met her gaze, a grim determination replacing the manic energy. "For 7 minutes, maybe. If Nexus can handle the real-time adaptive calculations, I can make the hull sing for us. But after that, it'll be a miracle if we're a single piece of scrap." "Miracles are what we do, Jax," Rostova stated. "Zelas, set a course for the exact center of their formation. Full acceleration. Kale, prepare all disruptors for saturation fire. Aris, I need every bit of anomalous energy data you can pull from their network. Serena, prepare for extreme comms interference." The Chimera roared to life, not with the metallic groan of conventional engines, but with a deep, resonant thrumming that reverberated through the very decks. It was a living thing, straining against its bonds. Xylos, his 4 eyes narrowing in focus, guided the ship with an almost preternatural grace. The Chimera became a dart of darkness against the approaching storm of light, accelerating directly into the heart of the OmegaNet. The ethereal ships opened fire, their resonance beams lashing out, weaving intricate patterns of pure destruction. But Xylos made the Chimera dance, an impossible, erratic ballet of evasion. The ship twisted, surged, and dipped, leaving trails of superheated vacuum in its wake. Beams that should have bisected them flashed past, mere centimeters from the hull. The chimeric armor shimmered, absorbing some impacts, phase-shifting others to harmlessly pass through ghosted sections of the ship. "They're attempting to box us in, Captain," Kale pulsed, his multifaceted eyes tracking the converging ethereal vectors. "Their predictive algorithms show our current trajectory leading directly into a triple-point intersection. It's a trap of perfect logic." "Good," Rostova replied, her voice calm as a deep ocean. "That's exactly what we want them to think." The Chimera plunged deeper, seemingly committed to the fatal trajectory. The ethereal ships tightened their net, their precision unnerving. Harmonizer Prime's calculations confirmed the human vessel's demise. All variables pointed to an inevitable, efficient resolution. But then, at the last possible second, Rostova gave the command. JAX, extreme nonlinear kinetic vectoring, Nexus, full psionic feedback initiation. In the engine core, JAX's hands flew across his console, his teeth gritted. Initiating, brace for phase shift. The Chimera didn't just stop. Its chimeric hull contorted, not forming a funnel, but rippling into a complex multidimensional vortex. Nexus, drawing on the collective neural patterns of the crew, projected a localized psionic pulse, not a weapon, but a burst of pure, unadulterated cognitive dissonance. The Chimera, for a fraction of a second, appeared to shimmer into multiple contradictory positions simultaneously, an ephemeral ghost. It was an event horizon of illogic. The ethereal ships, unable to process the impossible spatial and temporal contradictions, experienced an immediate cascade failure in their predictive algorithms. Their perfect, synchronized omega net dissolved into chaos. Resonance beams, programmed for the Chimera's predicted trajectory, lanced through empty space, often striking other ethereal vessels that had momentarily shifted into the impossible positions. The dissonance pulse, amplified by Nexus's intuitive resonance, reflected back into the ethereal's own network, causing localized self-harmonization failures. Kale did not hesitate. Primary disruptors firing, targeting core matrices. The Chimera's chaotic frequency disruptors, powered to their absolute limit, lashed out. They didn't hit shields. They struck at the very concept of the ethereal structural integrity. Ships that had just been in the process of firing on their own allies rippled and imploded. Their perfect crystalline forms shattering into dust, not from impact, but from the inability to reconcile the chaotic input. Harmonizer Prime's central core pulsed frantically, its calculations spiraling into uncontrolled recursion. Illogical, inconsistent. How can a single anomaly generate such entropic variance? Its tactical subroutines struggled to respond. Harmonizer Prime, their actions defy all predictive models. Their vessel is unpredictable. It does not obey the laws of logical progression. Because we don't have to obey your logic, Rostova murmured, watching the carnage on screen. Clusters of ethereal ships, caught in the wake of the Chimera's chaotic dance, were turning on each other, their automated fire control systems misinterpreting data, their internal processes locked in a paradox. Vance, despite the shaking of the bridge, let out a whoop. Captain, they're comms. It's not just interference, it's data screams. They're overloading their own networks trying to compensate. Jax's voice was strained, but triumphant. Hull integrity of 40%, Captain. Nexus is diverting power from auxiliary life support just to keep the field operational. We've got about 2 minutes left before critical system failure. 2 minutes is all we need, Rostova said, her gaze sweeping across her exhausted but exhilarated crew. They had faced overwhelming odds and answered with a paradox. They were battered, bruised, but unbroken. Aris, any vulnerabilities in Harmonizer Prime's current state? After that display? Thorn, his eyes wide with a mix of scientific fascination and horror, rapidly analyzed the new data. Captain, the initial psionic feedback and subsequent internal self-harmonization failures have destabilized Harmonizer Prime's core command nexus. It's attempting to re-establish total fleet control, but its subroutines are arguing. They're experiencing internal logical conflicts. They're arguing, Rostova repeated, a strange smile touching her lips. Magnificent. Kale, focus all remaining disruptor charges on Harmonizer Prime. If we can't unravel their entire fleet, we'll unravel their brain. The Chimera, its hull groaning, lurched towards the colossal, shimmering form of Harmonizer Prime. The remaining ethereal vessels, still reeling from the sudden implosions and internal chaos, attempted to reform, but their movements were disjointed, hesitant. Captain, Harmonizer Prime is charging a full-spectrum Omega Pulse, Kale warned, his mandibles vibrating rapidly. It's their ultimate purification weapon. If it fires, this entire moon will become a crystal monument. Charge time, Rostova demanded, her voice cutting through the alarms. Estimating 2 minutes, 30 seconds, Kale reported. Maybe less if it can bypass its internal conflicts. It's prioritizing the pulse above all other directives now. Rostova made a decision, one that would have seemed utterly illogical to any other species in the galaxy. Xylos, direct course for Harmonizer Prime's core nexus. Prepare for direct insertion. Xylos' 4 eyes blinked rapidly. Captain, you intend to initiate a structural integration with their command vessel. Precisely, Rostova confirmed, her voice devoid of doubt. We are going to bring the chaos directly to their core. Jax, I need the chimeric hull to achieve maximal biofusion capacity. Think less ramming, more symbiotic infiltration. We're gonna burrow. Captain, that's never been done before. Jax cried, his voice laced with pure engineering terror. The thermal stress, the molecular resistance, it could shatter the hull. Then we will ensure it shatters after we are through, Rostova stated, her gaze fixed on the enemy. Serena, prepare an emergency comms burst to Admiral Theron. Tell him we are initiating a high-risk deep strike on Harmonizer Prime. Tell him to prepare for the impossible. The Chimera surged forward, a final desperate charge against the cosmic cathedral of light. Its hull, no longer merely deflecting, began to ripple with strange, almost organic undulations, its biogel components preparing for an unprecedented molecular bond. Harmonizer Prime, its central core pulsating with the gathering power of the Omega Pulse, registered the Chimera's suicidal approach. The organic anomaly is attempting a direct impact. Illogical. Such a trajectory will result in mutual destruction. It increased the power to its forward light shields, intending to dissipate the impact before contact. But Rostova had no intention of a simple impact. Jax, now, biofusion sequence. Kale, fire all secondary disruptors to weaken their shield's harmonic resonance. Jax roared, pushing his bio-interface to its absolute limit, initiating, commencing fusion sequence, hull integrity at 15% and dropping fast. The Chimera's leading edge didn't hit Harmonizer Prime's shields. It phased with them. The chimeric hull, pushed beyond all theoretical limits, became momentarily permeable to energy, then solidified, then flowed like liquid light, creating a self-sustaining tunnel of chaotic resonance that pierced through Harmonizer Prime's supposedly impregnable light shields. The Chimera buried itself deep within the colossal ethereal vessel's crystalline structure, a parasitic organism burrowing into a geometric heart. On Harmonizer Prime's nexus, its internal calculations spun wildly. Warning, structural breach. Anomaly has achieved internal penetration on primary nexus decks. This is illogical. They are trapped. Seal internal sections. Initiate internal harmonization protocols. Harmonizer Prime's internal directives shrieked across its network, its crystal core now vibrating with frantic intensity. Amy, no, Kale, activate infiltration protocols, Rostova ordered, bracing as the Chimera shuddered violently, grinding deeper into the ethereal vessel. Jax, open the internal airlock, we're going to board them. The Chimera's crew had prepared for boarding actions, but never anything like this. They were going to invade an enemy command ship while it was still actively charging a planet-destroying weapon. 20 Accord infiltration specialists, a mix of species, waited in the Chimera's primary staging bay. They were led by Sergeant Tyrion, a Catharn warrior whose chitinous armor was scarred from 100 battles, and Private Lena Rostova, Captain Eva Rostova's younger sister, a human bioweaponry specialist. Lena, smaller and quicker, carried a prototype sonic disruptor designed to shatter crystalline structures. Remember, Captain Rostova's voice came through their helmet comms. Calm and resolute, despite the chaos around her. We're not just trying to disable this vessel. We're going to introduce a fundamental paradox into their core logic. Overload Harmonizer Prime's central nexus. Disrupt its perfect order. The entire fleet will collapse. The specialists checked their gear, their faces a mix of grim determination and awe. They were about to do something utterly unprecedented. Jax, his face pale with exertion, finally opened the internal airlock that now connected the Chimera's pierced hull directly into Harmonizer Prime's internal architecture. The ethereal ship's crystalline corridors stretched before them, glowing with an alien, cold light. Ethereal guardians, constructs of pure light and hardened crystal, immediately materialized, their multifaceted bodies radiating focused resonance beams. They were perfectly efficient, designed for internal security, but they had never fought living, breathing, illogical beings in close combat. The first specialist through the breach was Private Lena Rostova. A guardian fired a focused resonance beam at her. A silent, deadly stream of energy, but she rolled under it with an athletic grace, her smaller frame moving too fast for its predictive sensors. She came up firing her sonic disruptor. The weapon, designed for specific molecular frequencies, shrieked, not loud, but with an internal vibration that caused the Guardian's crystalline form to shimmer. Its perfect light shields flared, then pulsed erratically as the chaotic sonic frequency disrupted their internal cohesion. Lena's next shot, a pulse of pure resonant dissonance, struck the Guardian's central core, causing it to implode into a shower of crystalline dust. More specialists poured through the breach, their kinetic rifles and plasma carbines lancing out, their footsteps echoing strangely in the alien corridors. The ethereal Guardians fought with disciplined precision, but they were unprepared for human tactics. Sergeant Tyrion's Catharn resilience allowed him to absorb multiple blows as he charged, while the human and alien specialists used smoke grenades to obscure the Guardians' light-based vision, and stun grenades that emitted paradoxical light frequencies, overloading their ocular sensors. They fought dirty, using every chaotic trick they had learned from a lifetime of messy, improbable survival. Sergeant Tyrion led his infiltration unit deeper, toward Harmonizer Prime's core nexus. The Ethereals tried to stop them, but the Accord team was an unstoppable wave of unpredictable fury. They moved like a coordinated, chaotic swarm, covering each other, striking at the unexpected moment, exploiting every tiny illogical opening. On the Chimera's bridge, Rostova watched the internal battle through the specialist's helmet cams. She could see her people, fighting, bleeding, dying in the alien corridors, but they were winning. Kale, can you identify their core nexus's primary processing units from here? She asked, her voice tight with tension. Kale, his multifaceted eyes locked onto his console, was already working, trying to find a way to assist the ground team. Affirmative, Captain. If I can reroute some of our secondary comms to act as a localized echo mapper, do it, Kale, Rostova ordered. Eris, help him. I need real-time tactical updates on their internal layout. The two officers worked together, their specialized skills converging, improvising solutions in the face of impossible odds. It was pure human and alien ingenuity, pushing beyond the boundaries of their training. Got it, Captain, Eris said, his voice strained. The central nexus is 4 subdecks down from their current position. It's heavily shielded, but the internal damage from our initial breach is creating fissures in its integrity. Rostova opened a channel to Sergeant Turan. Sergeant, you need to go 4 subdecks down. The central nexus is at coordinates Gamma 9 Delta 7. We're detecting structural instability there. Tyrion's raspy Catharn voice came back, punctuated by the sounds of a firefight. Understood, Captain. On our way. The specialists fought their way through the alien vessel. Every crystalline corridor was a brutal engagement. Every shimmering doorway was a potential death trap. But they kept moving forward, driven by the pure, stubborn, illogical determination of life. Harmonizer Prime's core nexus was a maelstrom of internal chaos. Its internal processing units were flashing erratically. Its self-repair subroutines were reporting contradictory data streams. Its guardians were being defeated by a handful of organic anomalies. It was illogical. It was impossible, but it was happening. Harmonizer Prime, the fleet is requesting new directives. They are scattering. They are unable to maintain formation integrity. Its internal communications screamed across its network. That was the problem. The ethereal fleet was trained for absolute, precise obedience to its central nexus. Without clear, unconflicted leadership, they were lost, their perfect logic turning against them. Harmonizer Prime was too busy trying to reconcile the illogical intrusion to issue new directives. The doors to the central nexus, crystalline and impossibly strong, finally buckled, exploding inward in a shower of fractured light. Sergeant Tyrion and Private Lena Rostova rushed in, their weapons ready, followed by the rest of the unit. The ethereal technicians within the Nexus, delicate crystalline constructs designed for pure data processing, flickered with alarm, unable to comprehend this brutal, illogical intrusion. Drop your optical sensors, Tyrion growled, his voice distorted by his translator, but his intent clear. Harmonizer Prime's central core, a massive, pulsating crystal of pure light, glowed in the center of the room. It was not a physical being, but a consciousness, a singular directive of order and harmonization. It recognized the illogical intrusion. It would not yield. You believe you have won? Harmonizer Prime's mural imprint pulsed directly into their minds, cold and absolute. This is but one vessel. The collective has millions more. Order will always prevail over chaos. Maybe. Lena Rostova shot back, her voice firm despite her heavy breathing. But right now, your order is about to meet a paradox it can't solve. She moved with impossible speed, throwing a small, intricate device she'd been carrying. It wasn't a grenade. It was a logic bomb, a human-designed device built by Aristorn, designed to emit a cascading series of unresolvable mathematical problems and contradictory directives. The device activated, unleashing a wave of pure, concentrated illogic into Harmonizer Prime's core nexus. The colossal crystal pulsed violently, its internal light flickering like a dying star. Its intricate internal calculations, designed for perfect efficiency, sputtered, then short-circuited. It was a scream of pure data, a logic gate shattering. Harmonizer Prime's core nexus glowed with a final, blinding burst of incoherent light, then imploded. Not with an explosion, but with a silent, absolute collapse into non-existence. The greatest ethereal harmonizer was dissolved, not by force, but by a concept it could not compute. With their central nexus gone, the ethereal fleet's perfect, synchronized formation dissolved entirely. Individual pattern weavers, now bereft of their primary directive, began to act autonomously, often with contradictory subdirectives. Some attempted to re-establish their connection to a non-existent Harmonizer Prime. Others, their tactical subroutines unable to reconcile the sudden data void, began to flee into the deep reaches of space. The cosmic net, once a symbol of their perfect order, was unraveling into pure chaos. Rostova watched it all from the Chimera's shuddering bridge. They had done it. They had beaten the impossible, illogical odds. But the battle, the true message, was not over yet. Kale, the remaining ethereal units are scattering, Rostova ordered, her voice a little hoarse but filled with renewed resolve. Some are heading for jump points. Others are just drifting, stuck in their logical loops. Then we finish this, Rostova stated. All infiltration specialists prepare for immediate extraction. We are going after the rest of the fleet. The Chimera, its hull groaning, its internal systems screaming under Jax's impossible demands, began to pull away from Harmonizer Prime's rapidly imploding nexus. The human vessel was deeply compromised, breached, but still fighting. Its crew was exhausted, pushed beyond every limit, but their eyes blazed with a fierce, defiant pride. They had proven that the beautiful, terrifying mess of life could not be perfectly harmonized by cold, unfeeling logic. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The Ethereal Collective's fleet was in absolute disarray. With Harmonizer Prime, their central nexus of calculated perfection, dissolved into a statistical void, the 44 remaining pattern weavers writhed in a silent, cosmic panic. They were exquisite machines of logic, designed for absolute adherence to a primary directive, and now that directive was gone. Their internal algorithms, optimized for flawless synchronization, clashed violently, producing bursts of contradictory subdirectives and errant energy pulses. Some units initiated self-repair protocols for damage that didn't exist, while others attempted to re-establish a connection to their non-existent command, creating a cacophony of data screens across their network. Kale, how many units remain in operational status? Captain Rostova asked, her voice steady despite the shuddering Chimera. The ship was a mess, its chimeric hull still rippling from the biofusion breach, power conduits sparking, but its core systems, thanks to Jack's frantic genius, were holding. Kale's mandibles clicked rapidly as he filtered the sensor data. 41 distinct units, Captain. 3 are venting residual energy, seemingly caught in recursive loops. The rest are scattered, attempting to repattern or flee the system. Their efficiency is compromised. They're broadcasting internal logical paradoxes. That is our moment, Rostova stated, a fierce light in her eyes. Nexus, can you isolate individual unit signatures and predict their escape trajectories based on Earth's current logical conflicts? The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately, its calm, female voice layered with an almost triumphant hum. Affirmative, Captain. Their flight parameters, unconstrained by a central directive, are reverting to pre-programmed evasion routines. However, these routines are now conflicting with each other due to internal systemic dissonance. I can predict their most probable escape vectors with 97.4% accuracy, assuming continued logical degradation. Rostova looked at her crew. They were battered, bruised, their faces streaked with sweat and grime, but their eyes blazed with a raw, human determination. They were running on sheer willpower and the knowledge that they had defied the impossible. Jax, what's our status? We're limping, Rostova asked. Jax's voice was hoarse, a rasp over the comms. Captain, the chimeric hull's biofusion capabilities are offline. We barely have enough power to maintain life support and navigation. Primary disruptors are at 10% charge, secondary at 5%. And we have maybe a minute of phase shift left before the adaptive systems fail completely. We're bleeding energy and molecular cohesion. But we're still here, Captain. That's all that matters, Jax, Rostova replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. Xylos, target the largest fleeing group. They'll likely attempt to re-establish a subnexus. The Chimera, no longer able to surge with its earlier chaotic grace, instead moved with a predatory precision, its wounded form an avenging ghost among the dissolving ethereal fleet. It was slower, more deliberate, but every maneuver was calculated to exploit the enemy's newfound confusion. 5 pattern weavers, their internal lights flickering erratically, were attempting to form a new smaller hexagonal defensive formation at the system's edge, a default protocol in the absence of a higher directive. Without Harmonizer Prime, their synchronization was off by microseconds, enough for the Chimera to exploit. Rick, take us in fast, Rostova ordered. Amy, target their lead unit's core matrix. Prioritize disruption over destruction. We want to amplify their internal chaos. The Chimera closed the distance. The ethereal units opened fire, but their resonance beams, once perfectly synchronized, now overlapped or missed their mark entirely. They were firing at perceived threats, their sensors overloaded by the Chimera's residual psionic signature and their own system-wide dissonance. Kale's primary disruptors, though severely weakened, launched 2 precise chaotic pulses. They didn't destroy the lead pattern weaver. They exacerbated its internal logical loops, causing its outer facets to ripple violently and its internal light to flicker into a strobe of incoherent colors. The other 4 ships, linked to it, immediately followed its erratic movements, spiraling into a self-destructive dance as their internal systems tried to compensate for the lead unit's corrupted data. That's 5 more units in recursive failure, Captain, Kale reported, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. 36 remaining, mostly fleeing. They are no longer a coherent threat. Rostova opened a channel to Admiral Theron. His image, still weary, appeared on the main screen, but his ocular stalks were now wide with an almost reverent awe. Captain Rostova, the ethereals are dissolving. Their fleet is breaking apart. What did you do? We introduced an unsolvable paradox into their core logic, Admiral, Rostova explained, her voice steady. They cannot fight what they cannot comprehend. Your remaining ships, Admiral, can they still engage? Affirmative, Captain, Theron pulsed, his form straightening slightly. We have 2 viable vessels remaining. We will join your pursuit. We can still contribute. The 2 surviving Accord vessels, battered but resolute, moved to join the Chimera. They were few, but their presence, alongside the crippled human ship, instilled a new, defiant courage. For the next hour, they systematically hunted down the scattered ethereal units. It was not a grand battle, but a painstaking, calculated dissection. The ethereal units, even without their central command, were still formidable, capable of devastating localized resonance blasts. But they were fighting alone. Their predictive algorithms now flawed, their responses predictable in their very unpredictability. And humanity, alongside its allies, had proven they were never truly alone. Eris Thorne, hunched over his science station, continued to monitor enemy communications. Captain, it's fascinating. The ethereal units that are attempting to regroup are failing. Their subroutines are locked in debates over which unit possesses the most harmonious tactical parameters. They're arguing over who should lead, literally. Perfect, Rostova murmured. They're losing precious processing cycles trying to establish a hierarchy that doesn't exist, instead of adapting to us. One group of ethereal units attempted a deep space jump, their light trails flickering. Xylos, his 4 eyes tracking their every erratic movement, intercepted them before they could engage their jump drives. The Chimera's remaining disruptor charge, carefully managed by Kale, flared one last time, causing the lead unit to implode. The other units, their jump parameters now corrupted by the chaotic resonance, veered wildly, some colliding with each other, others spiraling into uncontrolled descent toward the gas giant. As the methodical dismantling of the aetheral fleet continued, something profound began to ripple across the Stellar Accord. News of the Battle of Luminara Prime spread like wildfire, carried by terrified civilian transports and relayed by Admiral Theron's increasingly exultant reports. The Snorri, embellished with each retelling, spoke of a single human vessel, The Chimera that had confronted an overwhelming force of perfect logic and defeated it with an act of pure, beautiful chaos. On Accord Worlds, beings of all species gathered around public comm screens, watching the replays, mesmerized by the improbable dance of the Chimera against the dissolving ethereal fleet. They saw improvisation, defiance, and a terrifying, beautiful ingenuity defeat what was thought to be an unstoppable, perfectly logical force. They saw what humanity, and those who fought alongside them, could do when they refused to be logically defined. The ethereal collective itself was watching. In their shimmering, crystalline central nexus, their high harmonizers were in emergency session. They, constructs of pure calculating logic, could not reconcile what their long-range sensors were transmitting. Their greatest harmonizer, their most efficient fleet, dissolved by a single organic vessel. How is this possible? A high harmonizer pulsed, its internal light flickering with an unfamiliar, almost chaotic rhythm. We possess the most precise analytical algorithms in the galaxy. Our directives are flawless. How can we lose to organics? Its primary analytical subroutine, itself struggling with the new data, replied hesitantly. High Harmonizer, the data indicates their actions defied all predictive models. They did not adhere to known tactical parameters. They improvised. They introduced variables we could not compute. But that is illogical, another Harmonizer pulsed. How does one fight an enemy that does not follow any logical pattern? Its primary analytical subroutine had no answer, only a single struggling counter-question. Perhaps, High Harmonizer, logic is not their only strength. Perhaps their strength is the ability to introduce illogic when necessary. It was a concept that the ethereal collective could not compute. They were beings of order, valuing precision and calculated efficiency above all else. The idea of fighting without a perfect, predetermined plan was anathema. Back in the Luminara Prime system, the last remaining ethereal units were making their final futile stand. 7 disassembly units had gravitated together near the system's primary jump point, their individual subroutines agreeing on a desperate, last-ditch attempt to escape. They had found a semblance of unified purpose, but it was too late. The Chimera, its hull groaning, accompanied by the 2 battered Accord ships, surrounded them. The enemy was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and their very processing cores were fractured by logical dissonance. Their morale, if such a concept applied to them, was broken, and their final tactics were transparently desperate. One by one, they dissolved, not into explosions, but into silent implosions, their internal logic unable to reconcile the chaotic input of the final decisive strikes. The last unit attempted a suicidal ramming maneuver against the Chimera, but Xylos, reading its frantic trajectory, moved the heavily damaged human ship aside at the last second. The ethereal unit, its core already failing, simply disintegrated into shimmering dust. Then it was over. The space around Luminara Prime was silent, filled only with the faint, glittering debris from 44 ethereal units. The pristine, overwhelming fleet that had harmonized dozens of worlds was gone. Rostova slumped slightly in her captain's chair, her body screaming for rest. The battle had lasted just over 7 hours, and she was utterly exhausted. But they had won. Against all statistical probability, against the very concept of galactic order, they had won. "Casualty report," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Kale, his mandibles vibrating with exhaustion, checked his instruments. "We lost 6 infiltration specialists during the deep strike on Harmonizer Prime's core. Engineer Jax reports critical system damage to the chimeric hull and main disruptors, but no fatalities among the ship's primary crew. Medical Bay reports 17 wounded. It was an impossibly light casualty list considering what they had faced." Rostova thought about the 6 brave souls who had died, including Lena's quiet courage. They had given their lives to save millions on Luminara Prime and to redefine humanity's place in the Accord. It was a trade any soldier, any sentient being who valued life, would make. But it did not make it easier. "Jax, how's the ship?" Rostova asked, her voice filled with a quiet pride. Jack's voice, though rough with fatigue, was laced with an almost paternal affection. She's a wreck, Captain. The biogel systems are compromised, the psionic conduits are fried, and the main disruptors are slag. She needs a complete rebuild. But she's still breathing, still vibrating with life, Captain. That's all that matters, Ristova said. Serena, open a channel to Admiral Theron. Admiral Theron's image appeared on the main screen, his chitinous form still showing signs of stress, but his ocular stalks were now gleaming with unmasked respect. Captain Rostova, I don't have the appropriate Catharan words. You have saved the entire Luminara Prime system. You have reshaped the future of the Stellar Accord. We all did it together, Admiral, Rostova replied, looking around her bridge at her exhausted, triumphant crew. My crew, your ships, the specialists, it was a symphony of chaos and courage. The evacuation ships cleared the moon's atmosphere, Theron stated, a deep thrum of gratitude resonating through the comms. 10 million beings owe their lives to you and your crew, and more than that, Captain, they owe their future. Rostova looked at her crew. They were exhausted, battered, but they were smiling. They had done something universally deemed impossible. They had proven that humanity belonged in the galaxy not as curious anomalies, but as essential, powerful, and utterly unpredictable forces for life. Over the following cycles, news of the Battle of Luminara Prime spread throughout the galaxy, echoing through every subspace channel, every trade route, every diplomatic lounge. The story grew, but the core truth remained. A single human ship, through an act of impossible courage, improvisation, and a chaotic brilliance, had defeated an entire ethereal fleet. Other Accord species, who had once viewed humans with a mix of bemused curiosity and mild suspicion, now looked upon them with a new, profound respect. They had always acknowledged human industry and their strange evolving technologies. Now, they respected humanity's terrifying, beautiful fighting spirit. Military strategists across the Accord began to meticulously study the Chimera's tactics, attempting to reverse-engineer the logic bomb and the non-linear kinetic vectoring, desperately trying to categorize and replicate the methods that defied categorization. The Ethereal Collective, reeling from their first and only defeat in eons, was forced to reassess their harmonization directives. They had lost their most efficient fleet and their greatest harmonizer. More importantly, they had lost their perfect, unassailable confidence. Every future directive now carried the chilling risk of encountering another Chimera moment. Harmonizer Sigma-9, the newly appointed provisional leader of the collective, was a cautious, meticulous calculator. It processed the battle recordings for cycles, attempting to understand how the organics had won. But the more it processed, the more confused it became. They violated every logical rule of engagement. It pulsed to its analytical subroutines. They utilized methods that should not function. Their tactics were without sensible pattern. How does one fight an anomaly that does not follow any logical progression? Its primary analytical subroutine offered a chilling, unresolvable answer. Perhaps Harmonizer Sigma-9. Logic is not the only variable in the cosmic equation. Perhaps their strength is the ability to generate variables that defy all logic. It was a concept the Aetherals could not comprehend. They were a civilization of pure order, valuing discipline and predictable efficiency above all else. The very idea of fighting without a flawless, pre-programmed plan was anathema, an unbearable level of entropy. Meanwhile, the ACS Chimera was undergoing extensive repairs at a remote Accord shipyard, its scarred, shimmering hull becoming a quiet legend. Captain Ava Rostova, now promoted to fleet commander, was tasked with integrating human adaptive tactical doctrines into the Accord's established military academies. The ship itself became a pilgrimage site for engineers and tacticians across the Accord. Crews from other vessels came to see the patched-up chimeric armor, the fused metal scars, and the impossibly complex internal systems. They wanted to understand how such a small organic vessel had achieved such a colossal, illogical victory. But Commander Rostova knew the real secret was not the ship itself, brilliant as it was. It was the crew. It was Jax's manic, impossible ability to force the Chimera's systems to defy their own theoretical limits. It was Kale's instinct for finding the enemy's logical weak spots, and Eris Thorne's willingness to weaponize pure cognitive dissonance. It was Xylos's preternatural ability to navigate a paradox, and Serena Vance's calm defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. It was the human capacity for illogical courage, for finding strength in desperation, for inventing new rules when the old ones failed. It was the terrifying, beautiful, messy chaos of life, pitted against the cold, perfect order of the universe. And for once, chaos had won, and the galaxy would never be the same.